Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Friday night, and glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I did put the chat room open there and the link in there to what I want to talk about tonight. Found some interesting articles regarding child sexual abuse and survivors of child sexual abuse, adult survivors, and trauma reenactment, the trauma incurred because of the abuse and stuff. And this is what I'm going through right now. So I'm really interested in this, taking a look at what is available out there as far as research information goes. And this particular article is really good, quite interesting, and I found it was very helpful. So that's what I want to look at tonight. So thanks everybody for tuning in. You know, you have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject, and a lot of people may find it uncomfortable. You know, I'm not a counselor or therapist or anything, just a private citizen paying to do my shows here on Blog Talk Radio. So you have to listen at your own discretion, and you have to realize there's graphic warning in place on all of my shows, really. They're not for young children, and these shows should be really for adults only. This is mature material, and so young children under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. Get somebody who's an adult, who's older, who can help you make a decision whether you should be listening or not, because children have the right to protection, and, you know, at all times. So if you're under the age of 18 and under, make sure you have an adult, like a parent, caregiver, teacher, coach, mentor, somebody, school counselor, somebody. Listen to this, to my show with you first to make sure it's something you should be listening to, right, age appropriately. I appreciate that very much. So we'll get right into this. I've been talking about child sexual abuse for a few months now, really, and really started talking about it because of what somebody said to me not too long ago. You know, and I mention this on every show because I just want people to realize, like, that comment was so hurtful to me because, you know, I thought, how could somebody say that to me? That what's the big deal about CSA, child sexual abuse, right? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Okay, now I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write books about it. I'm going to, you know, do videos about it. I'm going to go public speaking. That just shows me that's just one person, and that was just a rude comment. But that just shows me, like, the society really doesn't want to hear about child sexual abuse. And yet, 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys will be sexually abused in some way under the age of 18. So if that isn't telling us something, yeah, it's covert. It's like everybody is sexually abusing children, and of course nobody wants anybody to know about it, right? And there's so many survivors out here. Some will tell. Some people will never tell. Some people will keep the secret with them forever. I just tell on everybody, right? As everybody knows who listens to my shows, one child abuse survivor to another, I just tell on everybody that's ever had anything to, you know, done any abusive thing to me. They're all getting mentioned because I don't mind naming and blaming and shaming, because the shame belongs to them, not me. And what I'm doing is really creating public awareness of the fact that, hey, I'm willing to stand up and talk about this stuff, and I'm willing to be honest about it, you know. And this is a horrific situation that children are going through right now, and then we'll have to deal with all this stuff later on. Now, some survivors of child sexual abuse and incest will handle things very differently. We're all different. We all handle things differently. We're going to cope differently. It's going to depend on the severity of the abuse. It's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on a lot of things, whether there was any support or help for the child, and, you know, when they were younger, whether or not they were just being abused in every other way, which I was, you know, so that there is no support, no help for that child. And then they're going to have to try to maintain, you know, some type of sanity when they get older, right? And it's not easy, right? So I really am looking for information regarding trauma incurred from child sexual abuse and incest, right? So this particular article is called Trauma Reenactment, Rethinking Borderline Personality Disorder When Diagnosing Sexual Abuse Survivors, right? So this is, you know, it's pretty, well, it's kind of really almost like a, you know, something that a therapist, psychotherapist, or, you know, somebody in the medical field, you know, who deals with this type of stuff would probably be looking at. It's very much it's a scholarly kind of an article here, but I just think it's really, you know, really good stuff. Like they didn't put it in such difficult terms that I can't understand it. You know, it's really quite interesting. So I'm just going to read through and pick out bits and pieces of it. It's a huge article, and I'm just going to cover it just tonight. But I just wanted to bring attention to it for people that realize that if you're like myself, I'm an adult survivor of all the different types of child abuse, right? Which is absolutely stupid and pathetic, but it's true, and it makes me angry, right? It makes me very angry that my parents did what they did and that my brother did what he did, and it makes me angry that society just doesn't care, you know, and that my own stinking dysfunctional family, I suppose, why would they care, right? Obviously, they were so screwed up in the first place. Like my siblings that are left, you know, why would they care? They're doing denial so good that they got their heads stuffed up their butts, and they're never going to come out, right? I mean, they're like ostriches with their heads buried in the sand, man. It's like, you know, they're not coming up for air, not ever, right? They'll go to their graves and they with whatever, you know. We got society doing the same thing, right? And in the meantime, us survivors are having to deal with this stuff. So that's why I'm doing these shows, really, is in hopes that somebody will realize that, hey, you're not alone. There is help, you know, and whatever help you decide to do, whether it's, you know, self-help or a therapist, counselor, you know, whatever. But make sure you get help. Do not allow yourself to spiral downward and have a horrible existence because of our past, right? We need to learn how to cope and how to get through this and how to get help and, you know, whatever way that we can, right? So important, right? So I want to take a look at this information so that people, maybe if you have not been abused sexually as a child, which I would hope and pray that you haven't, you know, that at least it would give you an idea of what we have to go through every day, or at least some of us. And then, you know, for those who have been abused sexually as children, that you would know that there is help out there and that we're not doing these things because we're bad or because we're crazy, all these, you know, trauma reenactment or, you know, these types of behavioral disorders really from the abuse, right? Whatever they may be, right? Anxiety issues, PTSD. I mean, this was just a result of the abuse that we suffered, and we don't have to feel shameful about it. We can learn to get help, right? And this is where I was 4 years ago. I decided, okay, you know, I'm going to get help. I'm no longer going to suffer in this alone. You know, I'm going to get help, and I'm going to learn how to deal with this stuff, right? And it's been a long journey. It's been a hard journey, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. You know, I'm glad that I finally made the decision to go on my healing journey, right? So I hope that, you know, if you're listening and you're a survivor, that you will just keep on looking for that hope and that help where you can, you know, where you can find it. And just keep reaching out. Never, ever stop reaching out. Just keep reaching out to those who will reach back out to you and put their hand out and pull you along, because that's what we all need, you know. We need support. And abused children, you know, quite often don't have any support, right? And then as adults don't have any support. So it's you know, we have to make sure that we reach out. You know, I now have a lot of support, not from my family, right? They'll never support me, right? But from friends who really are my family now, because these people really are supportive, right? They are very helpful, and they're helping me out a big way. So it's like, it's great to have that support. And somebody backing you up and saying, you can do this, I know you can do this, and, you know, and checking in with me to see how I'm doing. And if I have a bad day, they're not sitting there saying, oh, get over it, you know. And, you know, if I have a horrible day, they're just like, oh my God, I'm hugging you right now, and I'm thinking about you. And, you know, it's nice to hear that, you know, instead of my own abusive, dysfunctional, garbage family that sits there would say, you know, you're the one with the problem. What's the matter with you? Well, I was raped as a child. That's what's wrong with me. I was beaten as a child, you know, burned by my mother. Thank you very much, Mother. You know, my mother allowed my 21-year-old brother to rape me when I was 8 years old, right? And she didn't stand there and watch, right? She just tuned it out. No big deal, right? It's like, oh my God, you know. So this is horrific. This is what people will do. And I can't expect my abuser family to ever come and be by my side. No. Isn't going to happen. I cut them off a year ago, last year, and I'm so happy. I'm very happy that I did that. Talked about a show on the show this morning, and really wrote a blog entry about it and everything, because it was the best decision I could ever make, you know, because what it finally did was allow me to stand up for my rights, finally, at the age of 46 years old, to say, you can't hurt me anymore. You know, that's what it all boils down to. You know what I mean? That was my voice saying, you, my family, you know, cannot hurt me anymore. And I am so thankful, and they can all, really, I'm a Christian, but they can all go rot in hell. I really don't care. That's where I'm at tonight. A little bit of anger there. But anyway, adult survivors of sexual trauma can experience symptoms related to their childhood experience that are analogs to many of the diagnostic criteria of borderline. Hello, everyone. Yep, I did get dropped from my show, but that hasn't happened to me for a long time. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, so this article examines these symptoms in the context of the trauma framework from child sexual abuse, right? And they said that recognizing self-harming behaviors in adult survivors as reenactments of childhood sexual trauma, rather than characterologically manifestations of personality deficits, serves to improve the quality of care of such clients. In that mental health counselors may then focus on the unresolved issue rather than personality restructuring. Thus, understanding clients from a trauma framework can minimize the stigma that is often associated with the diagnosis of BPD, borderline personality disorder, and provide a more objective treatment climate. So this is really important, for people who are suffering from PTSD or any number of things because of the child sexual abuse, and it's horrific. They need to start looking at the actual, at these issues. Okay, that's the second time I've been dropped here from my show, so I don't know, Blog Talk Radio, I think it's a real problem with Blog Talk Radio here tonight. So the trauma reenactment, this is a huge issue for people who have been sexually abused as children, and quite often, like they said, that adult survivors of childhood sexual trauma who engage in self-injurious behavior, engage in risk-taking behavior such as promiscuity and substance abuse, experience difficulties in interpersonal relationships, are actually reenacting behaviors symbolic of the trauma suffered in childhood. So they said types of reenactment these individuals engage in may include behavioral, which would be, for example, inflicting harm to self or others, self-destructiveness, subconsciously sabotaging situations such that it leads to feelings of re-victimization and or re-experiencing flashbacks, which I have flashbacks and stuff like that, and have done a lot of, self-sabotaging my life, self-sabotaging relationships and self-sabotaging everything. It's just, stuff that I learned as a child, right? Several theories exist which attempt to explain the ideology of these reenactment behaviors, and one such theory was proposed by Van der Kolk in 1989, and he posited that these individuals are addicted to the trauma and therefore may try to recreate it. For example, a victim of childhood sexual abuse may become a prostitute. So some individuals have reported feeling bored, apprehensive, and anxious when not experiencing some form of activity reminiscent of their trauma. So this is interesting, and what I will talk about here in regards to my own story, really my own history, background of abuse, is that when I was growing up and I was a teenager, I was very often bored because if there wasn't any arguing or fighting going on or somebody getting hurt in my home, then I was bored, because that's what I grew up with. So, for instance, violence, I fed on violence. That I was forced to. I didn't like it, you know what I mean? But it's what I was used to. And so, if there wasn't some sort of crazy thing going on in my life, and I really believe that that's why when I was being beaten and abused and sexually used, and, by the time I hit 12, 13 years old, I was really starting to show the effects of that. I was actually looking for every kind of dangerous activity out there, really, that drugs and alcohol, partying and just, being crazy and doing crazy things, getting into vehicles with people I didn't know, going, to drug, houses and stuff like that where I knew I could get drugs. I was like 12, 13 years old, and, ended up in some scary situations all the way through until I was 21. And, wrecking cars. I used to drive, really crazy, and I would just be so high. And, I would wreck cars and hurt myself and other people, right? It's absolutely horrific. And, I was always looking for, I guess, because I grew up in that state of trauma, in the state of fight or flight, in the state of violence, right? That's what I just felt that my life would be. And that's why before I was right around the age of 20, especially 21, I really started to feel that I needed to change my life, because my brother had killed himself when he was 33 years old when I was 20, and that's the one that sexually abused me. And, and he was a cocaine head. He was a big-time drug addict, and so was my other brother up in Canada. And I thought, if I don't get off the drugs, I'm going to end up like them, in the gutter, just dead somewhere, or dead in a drug deal gone bad. And many of my friends, actually, that I used to hang around with were all coming from the same homes I was, and many of them actually did end up dead, right? Very, very sad. And this is just, what happens to people. Many of my friends were abused as well. And so, we just continued on in this road to destruction, really. The book I wrote, La Vida Juvies, that book is actually the year before we started all that really extremely dangerous behavior. We were just starting it right that year, and it just escalated. But that year was the last year that we were actually resembled kids, And most of us, like had grown up in these abusive homes, and so we were all looking for that drama, the trauma. You know what I mean? We couldn't just be happy just to just do normal things, right? So we had to be out getting in trouble and doing whatever we could do just within our own abilities, really, to cause trouble for ourselves and for other people. And that's what a lot of young people will do when they're abused as children, right? Because they're craving the high that you would get from, because really when you it's like an adrenaline rush, right? It's a flight or fight situation, flight or fight. So it's like when you're a child, obviously you can't fight, so the adrenaline just pumps through, the toxins, right, pump through your body when you're about ready to get beaten, or somebody's going to rape you or whatever, which my brother raped me and sodomized me and then raped me again many times after that. And the adrenaline and fear and your heart pumping and all the toxins running through your body, really a lot of negative bad stuff pumping through your blood and stuff, like you actually start to get used to that, and I was already being abused by my mother and my dad, actually. And so, I was used to being in that state of hyper alertness, and arousal, and then when my brother sexually used me, then it was just even that much worse, and so then I was really whacked out of it, always in a state of hyper arousal, always in a state of, wasn't the type to be sitting in the corner, afraid somebody was going to hit me. I would just do my thing, deal with what I had to deal with, and because I was a fighter, really, I kind of maintained my own in that home. I wouldn't sit in the corner and cry and stuff like that. I mean, I did a little bit of that on my own after being raped and stuff, but the main stuff that was going on before that and even after, the child physical abuse from my mother and my dad, right? Like, I wasn't hiding in the corner, you know what I mean? I was just doing my thing. If I caught a beating, I caught a beating or whatever. But, it was that state of always being in that state of fight or flight, with those chemicals running through your body. Then you learn that becomes the norm for you. So just sitting around just doing the normal thing isn't good enough. It's not quite exciting. There's nothing to it. So you almost do get addicted to that. And I, it is quite interesting to see how that does happen. I knew that at the time. I knew exactly what that was. I knew that was happening to me, which is bizarre, but it's very true, And my friends actually knew it was happening to them too. And we got into some heavy-duty drug use, at a very young age. And, we didn't care. We were just like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. We're so used to living our lives, in this state of trauma and craziness, that it doesn't really matter what we do to ourselves, right? They said so they might try to recreate it, because they're addicted to it, really. He says that for children who experience trauma, these experiences became synonymous with relationships, and the child is often in a constant state of arousal due to fear, rage, hyper-alertness, or anxiety. And this constant arousal impacts the biochemistry of the child and inhibits the return to baseline. See, so that's what happened to me. So thus, as an adult, the individual may be addicted to the excitement, which is painful, while also to them pleasurable and comfortable, right? So even something that's painful, it would be okay, because it's like, well, that's all right, it's painful because that's what my body's used to, So it's okay, you know what I mean? It's like, so as far as self-injury goes, that's why a lot of little survivors will self-injure and cut, and for many reasons. Sometimes they say it's to cope, and other times it's because it's the reenactment of the abuse, right? That's why I wanted to spill my blood. I really, 4 years ago I was sitting on the couch with a screwdriver. I wrote about this in my book, A Life of Death and Redemption, and I was going to rip myself to shreds. I was going to rip up my arms. That's what I was going to do with the screwdriver, and I put it down on the coffee table. I thought, what am I doing? No one's going to care if I kill myself or self-injure. This would have to be just for me, because nobody in the whole world is going to care, right? So why am I doing this? And I really had to think about it. Really, I just wanted to show people the pain I was in. I just wanted the world to see my pain, because they couldn't see inside my heart. So I thought, okay, if they can't see inside my heart, I'll rip myself to shreds, and that will show the world how much pain I'm in. And then I thought, who's going to care? Nobody. Right? I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? I'm actually quite bright. But the thing is I do the dumb things, but that doesn't mean that I'm stupid. The issue is that I was absolutely correct. Nobody would care, because I didn't have anybody in my life that would care. And, my sweetheart, he would have been, not understanding it. He'd have been like, oh, well, you know what I mean? He's not a real, overly sensitive kind of a guy. He'd just be like, well, that's too bad, and then he'd move on with his life. He doesn't live his life according to other people. He just lives his life. So, it's like so in other words, he's not codependent, right? So this is the thing. It would have been just detrimental to me, right, to hurt myself. I'd have ended up in the wound clinic, under suicide watch or something. That would have been, and I thought about it, and I thought, why am I doing this? It's a cry for help. That's what it is. I want people to see what happened to me as a child because I want them to see how much pain I'm in because this hurts. You know what I mean? And I finally had enough. I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, this hurts so incredibly bad. I have to reach out. So really that's the point where I started my healing journey, and that was April 2007. And, before that I had just been suffering along in this, and it's absolutely horrific. Like, none of us should have ever... See, that's why I cannot be around my family because they're still in it. They're still in it, right? And I can't do it anymore. I can't do that anymore. And so, like, I had to cut them off completely because I can no longer even sit in the same room with them because I can't do that BS anymore of let's pretend we're a family, right? I'm done with it. I'm so done with it. And would I have been better off to just continue on in denial and just try to hang out with the abuser family? I may have been. But I don't know. You know what I mean? But I like to think that by coming to the truth of our situations as far as is actually what allows us to heal. So, like, I know that I still have a lot of work to do in my healing journey, right? Obviously, and the thing is like, but I've made progress, and I can see the progress, right? So it's awesome. But the thing is somewhere down the road, hopefully sooner than later, I will be able to gain that confidence and that trust in myself, and that belief system that says, you know what, I never deserved any of that. I never deserved what my parents did to me. I never deserved what my brother did to me. Like, no child would ever deserve that, And I have to learn to be kind to myself, good to myself, right? And to not be so hard on myself, you know what I mean? Which I try to give myself some slack, and you know what I mean? In some areas I do, in other areas I don't. But it's just so incredibly harsh, you know what I mean? That anybody should ever have to suffer like this. And then to have, like, no one in their family support them. Like, no one, right? And, the situation is that the reports were there. I could even see if the reports weren't there. And then I could say, well, geez, I don't know, did this really happen? I'm the only one that seems to be upset. It's like, no. That's why I wrote my story, A Life of Death and Redemption. My dad, he was absolutely insane. Tried to kill himself. I mean, the guy was, and my family just all in denial. Oh, yeah, but it's all great. Mom makes cookies. Mom used to make cookies, and look at Dad, he just gave me $20 for gas. Isn't that wonderful? Like, my family is so incredibly screwed up, you would not believe. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, a lot of people would know, right? Survivors of abuse would know. But anyway, it's absolutely horrific. None of us should have ever had to go through this, right? They say that the constant arousal impacts the biochemistry of the child and inhibits a return to a baseline. So they said, thus, as an adult, the individual may be addicted to excitement, which is painful, right? So they said, just as heroin may activate this system and create a cycle of dependence and withdrawal, so might the hyperarousal that is created with the trauma. So self-injurious behaviors perpetuate this cycle by producing the stress-related opiate stimulation. So to further substantiate this theory, Van der Kolk highlighted the benefits of opioid receptor blockage medications in decreasing self-mutilative behaviors. And this just goes on and on. This article is just absolutely amazing. I hope everybody will check this out. They talk about the impact of trauma on development, right? Traumatic childhood experiences may impede the normal development process, right? And this just goes on and on and on. This is probably one of the best articles I've ever seen in my lifetime about adult survivor issues and why this is to do with sexual trauma, right? And why we do what we do, right? It's so good, and if you haven't read it, it's from the Free Library, www.thefreelibrary.com /trauma plus reenactment, and you can just type into your browser trauma reenactment, rethinking borderline personality disorder. That's the name of the actual article. We have about 5 minutes here. But this is just an amazing article, and there's so much great information here. Like, if you need any information from me, if you need any links or resources or anything that I've been using on my show to talk about this stuff, let me know, because I know where I can get a hold of all this stuff. Like, I have all my links and everything, and they talk about like so much stuff here. They talk about they go on to mention things like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They talk, which is, what I kind of probably do suffer from some of that because I have a lot of flashbacks and stuff and anxiety and coping issues. Rethinking borderline personality disorder. They talk about that. They talk about, down towards the bottom, a conclusion, and they give some lists of references and stuff, materials that people can get a hold of, right? So this is like really, really good information. So I hope everybody will take a look at that from thefreelibrary.com and trauma reenactment, because that's the issue. So many of people who have been sexually abused or abused, and it was the trauma from it, just causes all kinds of situations, problems for them. And there was an interesting piece where they said that they actually, PTSD symptoms of anxious arousal, depression, avoidance, intrusions, impaired self-reference, dissociation, sexual concerns, right? This is PTSD symptoms, from child sexual abuse, right? And so many of us suffer from this stuff, you know what I mean? And a lot of us then feel shameful, right? If, survivors of child sexual abuse, because we think, why are we feeling the way that we feel? Why are we feeling these feelings? And why are we having these body memories? And why are we, there's good information out there, right? And the shame does not belong to us. It belongs to the abusers and those who chose to hurt us. And so the shame is not mine. I don't take the shame on at all. And and that's why I don't mind talking about this stuff publicly, because it's not my shame. What was done to me was a crime, a criminal offense. It should have been punishable by the law. Should have been punished by the law. But the thing is that my two main abusers are dead. My brother committed suicide when he was 33, and my mother died about 16 years ago. You know what I mean? But both of them should have been brought up on charges. My mother was brought up on charges years ago when I was little. So was my dad. But they should have been brought up on charges again. And we would have definitely been removed from the home. You bet we would have. Absolutely horrific, right? None of us should have had to go through this. Thanks very much for being here tonight. I appreciate it. Hopefully the show actually did stream through the rest of it there. Have a good weekend. If I can get you anything, let me know. If I can get you any information or resources. Otherwise, I'll be back on my show page on the weekend, and also One Child Abuse Survivor to another, 6 o'clock a.m. on Monday morning. Take good care of yourselves, everybody. Make sure you keep reaching out. Make sure you keep looking for that help where you can find it, right? Have a great night.